stay open to opportunities. The reality of like, you can be the greatest artist in the world, but if you create what just in your studio and the world doesn't get a chance to experience that, interact with you, the chances of you being successful are really slim to none, right? Because relationships, they run the world, right?
If you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now. Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. With me is artist G. Horton. And it's a pleasure to have him on. We want to just talk about his journey, about how he moved from corporate to art and focused on a corporate career and decided to take a huge leap of faith to go out and be an artist. G, how you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. How you?
I'm doing well, man. So yeah, I forgot. Are you married?
I am.
You're married.
With 2 kids.
Okay. I am curious to see how this conversation went.
Okay.
When you said, baby, I want to tell you, the word, God spoke to me, the spirits moved me, whatever you told her would happen, right? That this is what I need to do. I want to step out, leave my corporate job and be an artist. How'd that conversation go?
Well, it was really my wife who said it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was, honestly, man, like, I tend to, I see the best in others sometimes, and sometimes it's hard to see the greatness in myself. And it takes people around you to really remind you of what you're capable of. And my wife, she was one of them. And when the pandemic happened, and it was that window to really explore what life could look like with me going into this space, she was leading the charge. She was like, yo, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And here we are.
I got some, I'm married too now, just recently, actually. I got married over Christmas Eve. When I went through like a trying period with my love life in general, I recently got a divorce, and just things were I was just in a funk, and just a lot of things were happening, right? And the best advice I got when it came to a relationship, I asked this is the president of a Black university. I can't remember the brother's name, but I remember his advice. I asked him, like, how did you know that it was right with your wife, and and how did you know it might work out? He said, well, it wasn't necessarily because, I had this hot and heavy feeling forever, and that I just knew because of all this passion. I'm not saying that wasn't the case that many times, right. But the real thing was, because, that stuff, if we're honest about men, if it's just pure quote unquote passion or lust, you can always find a bigger butt. You can always find you can always find whatever. I mean, it's there. If that is your only pursuit, that's what it is. Yeah. But he said this, and it really stuck with me. He said, look, I like who I am when I'm in her presence. Right. It was really that simple. And I thought it was really profound. It's like, if you're around somebody who you guys are headed the same direction, and you really like who you are when you're in their presence, you got a winner, because right. It's a lot of other things. Most of those other things really don't matter. So the fact you had your wife there encouraging you says a lot.
And then also too, to add to that, I think, the ability to see yourself through someone, right? And when you can do that, like, they can see you in ways you may not see yourself. And my wife, she comes from an entrepreneurial background with her family. Her dad was a major entrepreneur. So it was just like, she grew up seeing this, right?
Right.
Where I didn't, I grew up in the slums of Louisville, Kentucky, in the western Louisville, Kentucky. So being an entrepreneur is like not even thought of, right? It's right. We wake up and we working for other people until it's time to retire, and whatever that looks like. So it was really hard, just like, yo, we can do this, and really identifying like my gift and allowing me to have a space where I can really build it and grow on it. So, yeah. But I think, like, you have to have those things in place, man. You have to have a team. You have to have a team who can see you. Like, LeBron couldn't win all them rings by himself. Jordan couldn't, Kobe. Like, you have to have a sharpshooter in the corner ready to knock down the three. You have to have somebody to get a putback and kick it down. Like, you have to have all of these different players in place in order to make a championship team, but also make a championship player. So yeah, that's how I look at it.
So speaking about that on the art end, I see a lot of artists struggle with the path of how do I move my art in terms of the business side of it. Right. Because they go through the struggle of, okay, well, do I make art to fit a certain demographic? How do I put it out there? How do I do the marketing? Or I just want to focus on my art and not worry about the selling it, which is crazy because you still got to eat. What advice would you give yourself now, or would you give others as they're kind of starting off about approaching the art of business, going about this in a way to set yourself up or to have to give yourself an opportunity to be scalable and successful? Like, what advice would you give other artists? What advice might you give yourself now that you've been through the rough part of the experience and you had these learning lessons?
Right. Well, I'm gonna give the advice first, and then I'm gonna wrap it into my story. So first two important pieces is one, stay open. You got to be open. You got to be creative as an artist. You got to stay open to opportunities. The reality of you can be the greatest artist in the world, but if you create with just in your studio and the world doesn't get a chance to experience that, interact with you, the chances of you being successful are really slim to none, right? Because relationships, they run the world, right? There's an incredible article that I read, and it talked about Paris in the height of its day and how it was the mecca for art and artists. And it was this hub where all of these creatives, they dwelled and they played and they created. And some of them were not the quote unquote best of the best artists, but they had a vast variety of networks and contexts and individuals who can consume their work. And that, in the way we view success, was a direct correlation to what success looked like. So I say that to say that networking is important. Get yourself out there as an artist. Don't just to create and expect to, become this incredible artist. You have to get out there and essentially do some business development. So that's number one. Number two, I would also say, and this has been critical for me, is find a mentor. And the mentor doesn't necessarily have to be an artist, but a mentor is someone who he or she understands business and can really allow you to look at your value proposition and get you in a position where you can show up in the world and ready to offer something that is tangible and something that can be commoditized. And I hate to use that word when we talk about art, but really allow yourself to connect with someone who can see angles that you cannot see. So those are the two important elements of advice I would give. I think my story, though, is non-traditional in the sense that, I didn't go to art school. I don't follow the rules, right?
Right.
I've been doing business development for the last 3 years. So I'm showing up in spaces more as a business person who happens to be an artist. And I say that for me has given me a level of leverage that not every artist may have access to, being in a room with decision makers and being able to know the emotional intelligence on what needs to be said or what needs to be done, or how meetings need to be conducted in order to get that initial meeting to the second meeting, to get the second meeting to a place where we can draft up a proposal and we can close out all of those different intangibles. I've learned being in the business environment. So I think it has really, it's given me a leg up or a competitive advantage, if you will. But also too, I've been connecting with influential people for the last couple of years. So when I make the pivot from going from Gary Horton to G Horton, that credibility and the relationship piece is already there. And it's really more okay, how can we work together? How can I help you with what you're doing? So it's been an interesting time, man. And I'm really fortunate and blessed to be in the space that I'm in right now. Yeah,
I have a similar story in terms of, what I'm doing. I'm very new to entrepreneurship. New really to all of this. And my former career was as an attorney, and then I was very concentrated in public service, and I saw my path as being whatever, mayor, governor, and I'm like, okay. And then I ran for statewide office, did very well, but didn't. This is Ohio. It's not. It is what it is. Even though I got over 2 million votes, it was a very heavy Trump country, and I'm not. That's not where I was aiming. Not the important part of this conversation. The important part of this conversation is similar to you. I had to pivot but I was already building relationships prior to what I did. So it's very important, as you said, to be intentional about building relationships. Build relationships before you need something in the relationship if you can, and do something of value. And also recognize that you can be an artist and still figure out a way to scale your business. I know, specifically in the Black community, there's been this, I think, wrongly associated philosophy that if you're chasing money for your art or just for yourself personally, then there's something like wrong about that, or you're being selfish, or everything is transactional. I tell people like this, though. I look at it like this. Dr. Martin Luther King, if you wouldn't have known the greatness of his words had he not been on the right platform. And in order for him to get on the right platform, they raised money. Like, you can't do things without some money, some foundation. I'm not saying that's your only why. That's not your reason for doing everything that you do. But the reality is that unless you have a plan to figure out how you get your voice out, how you get your art out, it's not going to work. And you need money and or relationships to do these things. There's no other way.
Hey, listen, man, if my wife didn't know, if she didn't believe that I was able to secure the bag, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You know what I'm saying? Real quick, before I touch on that, I want to go back to like the advice piece you mentioned. And I have a third one. And this is just for artists, this is particularly for an artist. If you're an artist and you're working in the corporate space, or maybe you're working this job that you're not too happy about, and you feel like you could be, you could be doing art making full time. My best piece of advice is this: just know that nothing is ever wasted, right? Those experiences are never wasted, right? And I think it's more of a mentality shift of like looking at the situation or the condition that you're in and saying, okay, how can I maximize from this? Right?
That's a great point.
I mean, I was, even before I was working in the corporate space, man, I was coaching Division I basketball, women's basketball. I was coaching at Xavier, and I was like, at one point, I was really unhappy, but I knew it wasn't like the end of the road, man. So it was then I had to ask myself, okay, what can I take from this experience to put me in a position where I can get access to the next opportunity.
Right.
And it's just been that same mentality, when I went to this corporate space, I was there enough and I made a decision. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be here forever. How can I learn? And how can I just embrace this mindset that this experience isn't wasted to help me, down the road. So nothing is ever wasted. That's the third piece. But going back to the whole money piece, man, it's important.
Before you go on that, get to the money piece in a second, but I want to just interject for a second. When you think about nothing's ever wasted, I mean, I've had that experience in life too. Like, there are so many, like I hated my first, like working at a corporate firm was, I'd rather do anything else. Like, I'd rather watch paint dry and just for the next 2 hours than to go figure out how I'm going to bill corporate clients. Look, not for me. Right. I thought I could like it because the checks were good, but it didn't move me, and I hated going to work. I mean, hated it. I mean, but I still gain knowledge from that experience. I still use a lot of what I learned. I'm not technically an engineer now, but I got a background in engineering, and I use those problem solving. So you're so right to make sure that wherever you're at in your life, just absorb as much as you can, build the relationships, because you never know how that can be applied in the future, because life often only makes sense looking backwards. Like, I can see a lot of things now that I did in the past that help me right now, but I would have never understood that at that point in my life. So you got to just, it's part of like trusting the process and embracing the process as you go along, and know that, there will be something that will align for you, but you can't just tap out in this moment and just give up.
Yeah, you can't become a victim to the condition.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we look at the situation that we end up in. Like, the crazy thing about it is, like, I always remind myself, like, whatever job I was in before I was in that job, whether it's corporate or whether it's coaching, I would say to myself, like, yo, I busted my butt to get this job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's always like, when we go through the interview, we're praying that we get the job, or, and when we get the job, then it's just like, oh shit, I'm ready to go do something else. So it's like, the conditions are always shifting, man, but you cannot become a victim of the conditional situations that you're in. It's just really like looking at them, assessing them, and figuring out how to level up to get to the next one,
I agree. Speaking on that, so what would you say about it? Was there a time when you were on a path of something that you really cared about and you failed?
Yeah.
And you failed in a way that you didn't expect, or you just failed. Can you think about a time like that and how that might have actually set you up for better success now as an artist or just as a person?
Yeah, man. So I'm gonna go back to my coaching days. I was really good as an assistant basketball coach. I was good on the floor with players. I know how to develop and motivate players and get the best out of them. But I was really good at recruiting. I knew how to get a kid on the phone and get him excited about playing college basketball, and it didn't matter which logo was on my shirt, whether it was Furman, U of L, Xavier, it didn't matter. It was just like that relationship piece. And I remember a situation, I was recruiting a kid. She was based out of Nashville. She was like a top 100 kid.
Yeah.
And I was like putting my work in, man. And you know, it was a couple things that happened. Like we were getting close towards, you know, decision-making process, that moment where she makes a decision whether she's going to come to this school.
Yeah. Where she wears the hat, say, I'm coming here or going there. Yep.
And, you know, my coach knew that we had the kid. My AD knew that we had the kid. And this would have been like, she was considered a program changer. And she backfired at the last hour. And that was honestly, for me, I looked at it as like a failure because I had made a promise to myself and then also to my coach and everybody else, like, we're going to get this kid. Like, she's going to be wearing this shirt, you know, but she didn't come through. And for me, it was a moment where I had to like stop, right? And really look at the dynamic of that industry, which really, I internalized that failure as if it was my fault.
Right.
It was more like, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe the program ain't good enough.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, in an industry like that, people are, you are in a business where it's really all about people, and the decisions they make can really decide if you're successful or unsuccessful. And it was that moment when I was like, you know what? It was at that moment when that happened, I quickly got depressed. It was like,
I understand.
I got depressed, man. I mean,
I've lost 2 elections. I understand.
Okay. Right. And you working, you doing campaigns, like you doing the thing. And I was in so many ways doing it as well. But man, I hit a low. And what happened was I needed an outlet because I was becoming depressed. And that's when I picked up a paintbrush.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment I realized that art is a space where it's all dependent on me. It's all about how I show up. You know, I'm not asking anybody to paint for me. I'm not asking anybody to, it's really all based on my performance. It's really performance based. And I know I said it earlier, it allowed me to be selfish. And that was a big learning lesson for me, is like, don't take it personal.
Yeah.
And keep searching and stay open. And if I didn't do that, who knows where this conversation would be.
I mean, I have so much overlapping similar lessons in my life. And I really started this podcast and platform initially, to be really honest, as just therapy. I'm like, all right, I need to do something to get my voice out, because it's not going to be this right now. That's not what it's going to be. So let me focus on doing something where I can get my voice out, empower people, inspire people, and inspire myself too, and figure out a way forward, and just to do something, right? And I mean, it's led to a lot more opportunities, but you really do have to pivot from that moment, and you can't allow yourself to stay there. That's one. Two, I do think there's also this emotional intelligence that we have to learn, this emotional intelligence muscle we have to develop, and understand that, in your situation, people can ghost you. In my situation, people are not always going to vote for you, and you can only do so much.
Right.
And you can't you can't control other people's decisions at all. So what you can do is speak to your true self, be your true self, know why you're doing things, and make sure, as you say, it's ultimately, though you're doing your art for you personally, you don't take it personal when people don't like your art or reject you, because that's got nothing to do with you. It's them.
For sure. It ain't for everybody. You know what I mean?
It's not.
Yeah, and
that's a hard lesson to learn because we all have egos. We take it personally when we fail. But if you can learn that emotional response to not take it personally, right, and then actually figure out what you can learn from the situation. I've had people tell me they were going to do something and they don't do it. It happens more often than not, really. So I kind of like, but if you get to the point, if you get too jaded, then you can't work with people. If you just become defeated, then you won't be able to work yourself. So you're totally right.
Or if you become a victim to the condition.
If you become a victim to the condition, that is exactly right. So I have a couple rapid fire questions I like to ask people.
Let's get it.
What's an important truth or conviction you have that very few people might agree with you on?
Let me get that again. It's not quite right.
Sure. Okay. What's an important truth or conviction you have that a lot of people might disagree with you on?
The Black and brown people are by far one of the most incredible and most beautiful species on the planet.
All right. Well, I agree with you on that. So you have a committee of 3 advising you on life, business, art, whatever. Who are those 3 people and why?
Woo. Oh, man. Geez. Nipsey, just because.
Nipsey's a good one.
He has that street like persona that I come from that, and it reminds me of how you can still get it and not lose sight of where you come from. Yeah. So that's one.
This is a good one.
Business.
It don't have to be business. It can be life, whatever. Art, whatever you want. They can be living or dead. Well, obviously you have one. Yeah.
Okay.
You chose Nipsey, so you got that. So, but yeah.
Let's get art. I'm gonna go with Basquiat, man.
Okay.
Basquiat, because he was a New York-based self-trained artist who just really he exploded the industry in terms of contemporary art, and he didn't play by the rules. And his fearlessness.
He was a disruptor. I like it.
Yeah, he was a disruptor, and his fearlessness is one that I admire. Third is Toni Morrison.
Okay. That's your third. Yeah, you guys 3. Go ahead. Toni Morrison, go.
Toni Morrison, because she is the epitome of what Black excellence looks like to me as an artist, but someone who she really created artwork unapologetically for us and didn't create work that was really filtered through this term that she identified as a white gaze. And it's nothing against white or Black. It's just really Eurocentricity dictates so much of the Black experience. And she was so animate about creating work that was unfiltered. And it was unapologetically Black. And that's a model that I try to live by, and artistic stance that I try to stand on when I'm creating work or when I'm even considering creating work. And then the last one is Muhammad Ali. I'm a Louisville guy. Muhammad Ali. Say no more with that one.
Yeah, you don't have to say much. All right, final question.
Okay.
You have a billboard or a Google ad that is a saying for your life. What is that saying? Why?
Oh, geez. Damn, these are tough questions, Rob. Life is good.
All right.
Life is good because it is. And I think for me, life is good is because it's all perception based.
Yeah.
And sometimes when life isn't feeling like it's good, I have to remind myself that it really is good.
Yeah.
It really is good. Like based on we were fortunate enough to be born in a place in a time where you can go get it if you really need to, right?
Yep.
Not everybody has those same privileges, man. And although, Black and brown people in America are still fighting for equality, we still have some privileges that allows us to go out and go get it. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And life is good because of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, there's no better time to be born a Black and brown person than 2021. I mean,
right.
Talk to some of our ancestors in 1951 and see what they would think about our current situation.
Right.
Not that it's easy. We're not that we beaten racism, not that we don't fight it. Obviously, anybody who listens to this show knows where I stand on that. At the same time, though, right, we have to understand the progress we made and the opportunities we have in this moment. And we're still going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to still fight for not only equality, but now it's time to fight for equity. And we're doing that across the board in art, entrepreneurs, people like yourself, G. Horton. Proud of what you're doing.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. And as always, keep disrupting, brother.
Appreciate it. Likewise.
Thank you.